In the book of Mark, 12th chapter, 37 to 44, the scriptures by Jesus makes it very plain whose example we are to look up to. Is it the Pharisees, which are the teachers of the law? Is it the scribes, which were educated men that wrote and copied the law down? We find that over 2,000 years, very little has changed. The characters that Jesus met as he walked those streets may be long dead and buried. However, the attitudes are still there around us, both in the church and out in the world at large. Now imagine, if you will, outside the temple is the temple courts. The temple courts were vast and very busy place to be. It was a place where voices were raised in debate, talking and arguing between themselves with the teachers of the law that would come walking by. One day at the temple courts, Jesus and his disciples were sitting there debating and talking among themselves, when sweeping past them come the Pharisees in their flowing robes. And as they do so, folk turn and greet them with bow of the head and mumbled words of respect. The Pharisees acknowledged the bowing, perhaps with a small hand gesture or a slight glance in their direction. They are looked upon as someone special. Maybe the equivalent today would be the difference shown to royalty, a famous sports figure, or even a movie star. Jesus, sitting there watching them, says, "Look how they milk it. Heads in the air, robes flowing, graciously acknowledging the greetings of the masses as they pass." The Pharisees take the front seats in the synagogue in full view of the congregation so they can be seen. At feasts and banquets, the Pharisees take the seats of honor. You could always tell the honor in which a man was held by the place at the table that he sat. The first place was on the right of the host, the second on the left of the host, and so on around the table. Not only that, says Jesus as they pass by, but these so-called men of honor, these religious leaders who are held in such high regard, they devour widows' houses. Now, what did he mean by this strange phrase? They devour widows' houses? The nearest I can come to an explanation is to think back a few years to the controversy that surrounded a certain TV evangelist and his wife. They played upon the emotions of their listeners to the point that they were received ridiculous amounts of money, which were supposed to be supporting their charitable enterprises and ministry, but in fact was supporting a very lavish lifestyle, and not a terrible Christian one at that. Innocent people were duped by the false piety of someone who seems to have been no more than a TV entertainer. Then, as Jesus sits there, he mentions those long prayers. Are the long prayers so bad then? Well, it's been said that the prayers of the Pharisees were not so much offered to God as offered to man. They were offered in such a place, in such a way, that no one could fail to see how pious were those who said it. Now, that is an awful lot of criticism. Well, first of all, Jesus' words throw down a challenge to all who hold office in the church, to all that holds the office in the church, to those who stand up and preach, to those who play instruments, to those who are elders, deacons, members of church councils, treasurers, and secretaries or office holders. Why are we doing it? Is it because we enjoy the status that gives us, such as the Pharisees? Do we look upon these church jobs as privilege rather than responsibility? Are we looking at them as a source of praise, admiration from others, such as the Pharisees? Or do we treat it as a means of service, a means of service. You know, everyone likes to be treated with respect, yet the way of Christ is to forget self rather than hoist it up on a flagpole for all to see. Taking a job because of respect and honor that it gives the office holder is taking the job on for all the wrong reasons. The way of Christ is the way of the servant. As Jesus is sitting there with the disciples, probably between a court of the Gentiles and a court of women by the gate beautiful, a gate that is so large it takes 20 strong men just to close. In the court of the women were 13 collecting boxes called the trumpets, because that was what they looked like, trumpets. Each collecting box was a very special purpose and was for contributions toward the daily expenses and sacrifices that took place in the temple. It was a very visible way of giving for all to see. You could be in no doubt who were the generous givers and who was not, simply by the clatter of the heavy coins as they hit the boxes. Look at them, says Jesus, just like the scribes and Pharisees who flaunt their authority and power for all to see and acknowledge. Look at the way that the rich pause to make sure that everyone is watching as they throw all those heavy coins into the boxes. You can even hear how generous they are. Then look at that widow over there. She just threw in 2 small coins, but you probably didn't hear because they're only light. Only worth, well, in today's money, perhaps 1/4 of a penny. Yet, says Jesus, I tell you something. That woman has given far more than any of those others whose contributions clattered so loudly as they threw coin after coin into the boxes, because they gave what they could easily spare and still had plenty left. She gave everything she had. Everything she had, small though it was. It all comes down to attitude. With the scribes and Pharisees in their flowing robes, flowery prayers, false show of piety, it was their attitude to their position was all wrong. The giving of money, gifts, resources, skills, time, whatever we call to give, must be sacrificial to have meaning. I'll say that again. Must be sacrificial to have any meaning. If you should have wealth, a respectable name in the neighborhood, a big house, fancy car, and so on and so on and so on, you know, the sort of earthly things that people put great stock in, does not matter in the kingdom of heaven. Does not matter in the kingdom of heaven. It's not the amount, but the sacrifice that goes with it. I am sure that these 2 stories are placed together by Mark for a reason, because they both touch at the very heart of our faith. The Son of God came, we are told, not to be served, but to serve. The Pharisees were only interested in themselves, while the widow was interested in sacrifice. I'm Ron Snider. Thank you for making me a part of your day. Until next time, God bless.